what's up, everybody? I'm Skull.
I'm Zombie Cat.
And this is the Horror Den. And now today we will be covering a pretty recent horror film, which I thought it was way older than that. We will be covering Butterfly Kisses from 2018, directed by Eric Christopher Meyer. So, we've seen this movie before.
I like this movie a lot. We watched it probably not long after it was released, finding out how kind of not too long ago it was. Maybe like 2019, 2020.
Which is so weird because even when we first watched it, it's kind of like a Mandela effect. Like, I swore that this movie came out in like 2007.
I knew it wasn't old, but I didn't think it was as new as it was. I know, like, at some point in the movie it says it takes place during 2015. Like, I think what's going on in the modern time is 2015.
Yeah, which, I mean, that was 6 years ago, so that's a little crazy. But anyway, so we have seen this movie before, but we were really excited to cover it because it's kind of not talked about from, like, our circles.
Very, very small, underrated movie, very indie.
Much like our recent videos, this one also happens to be a found footage film. After this review, we have mutually decided to kind of veer away from found footage just for a little while.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that until we started, and our editor was like, gosh, we're watching a lot of found footage movies. And I was like, we really are. Even Late Night with the Devil is found footage.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. It really makes you realize just how many found footage films there are now, and we haven't even touched on like some of the big ones yet. Or I should say the big one, with like other franchises spawning later. But after this one, we will diverge from that path a good bit. But so very interesting story, a little different in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Just kind of some brief synopsis here. So the main story covers this filmmaker named Gavin, who his mother-in-law finds this box, the shoebox full of like tapes, in like a broom closet or some bullshit. And
it was in the basement under like the heating unit or something. I can't remember.
Like a boiler room.
Yeah, boiler. There we go. That's what I was trying to say.
Anyway, finds this box full of tapes, gives them to Gavin. He watches them all, becomes obsessed, and decides to finish the movie that these other filmmakers were making that were in film school, named Sophia and Fieldman. And they were covering this.
The movie was called Butterfly Kisses.
Yeah, which
the documentary. This movie is a documentary talking about a documentary, which ends up being about a documentary.
Yeah, it's a documentary within a documentary within a documentary. And there is this documentary crew that is following Gavin around as he is trying to promote the finishing of this movie and then trying to publish it as his finished project with, I think his intention at first is credit to the original makers, but anyway. The story that the original filmmaking crew was making in their senior thesis covered this urban legend in their town in Maryland, where there's this long tunnel that's like a railroad tunnel, essentially.
Yeah, it's just a typical railroad tunnel.
And it's like a haunted, teenage hangout, which I believe that everywhere across the country and probably the world has one place like that.
Oh yeah, we have some around here, plenty of them.
Yeah, and they're conveniently like 5 of them. No one can really pin down where they exactly are. But anyway, so the whole urban legend surrounding this whole movie is that if you stand at the end of this tunnel, facing the tunnel, at midnight, and you stare down the tunnel for an entire hour without blinking, a mysterious figure known as the Blink Man will appear, and you will never be able to unsee him.
What's his main name they use?
Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom. That's the main name.
But basically, it all revolves around this urban legend of the Blink Man, aka Peeping Tom, which he's mainly referred to as. I think I just like the Blinking Man name more. But once you see him, you can't unsee him. And these filmmakers are setting out to prove that this is a real thing or to disprove it. And they definitely do.
So, yeah, like you were saying, so what this creature thing does, I don't even know what its qualified at. They actually say it, and I found this so interesting. I don't remember what the term for it was. He's like, whenever you're just zoning in doing something and you see that black corner in like the corner of your eyes, that's what he qualifies at. He's that kind of spirit. It's like when you look away, it's gone. But
I think that somebody like the cryptids expert mentions that there's like a German word for it. It's a kind of like ghost that like looms in the corner of your vision, and once you look, it's gone.
And that's so creepy because I have that all the time. I'm like playing a video game or something. I'm like,
yeah, you'll just see somebody just standing there hunched in the corner. I think we've all.
It'll just be like a black spot or like a curve, and I'm just like,
yeah,
okay.
But
and essentially, what happens is every time you blink, implying the name the Blinking Man, he gets slightly closer and closer and closer to you until eventually he's giving you butterfly kisses in the eyes, making you blink.
With his long eyelashes.
And you are no longer alive.
Yeah, and everybody who has ever managed to see him, you know, through the stories of a friend, they never make it. So, they recruit this guy from their school that's a staring champion, and they get him to try to do it, and he only lasts for like 15 minutes.
That's good.
Yeah, compared to an hour though, doesn't meet the requirement. So what they decide to do is they decide to rig up this camera to shoot down the tunnel for the entire hour. And, you know, they don't think that they find anything until reviewing the footage later. And sure enough, at the end of the tunnel, there is a figure that appears.
It's really cool. It like just comes almost from the ground, just like straight up. Like it almost looks like the Babadook or Slender Man. That's kind of the whole. I don't know if you've ever seen the Marble Hornet Slender Man series. This kind of reminds me a lot of that.
I have not. But also, while we're seeing these parts of the original filmmaking crew, we're also cutting to Gavin, who is piecing all this together and is trying to make his own movie and finish it, which is their movie. It's complicated.
It honestly focuses more on that story than it does the found footage movie, which is what he's trying to sell as a movie.
Yeah, but it cuts back and forth a lot. And then, you know, Gavin is showing all of these evidences to multiple different people. By the way, we didn't touch on this. It turns out that everybody that the original filmmaking crew speaks to are either you can't find them or whatever. So there's a lot of like theories that it might be a hoax. And so he's showing this evidence to people, and they're either saying, oh, this is fake, oh, you doctored this, you know.
Nobody's believing him. Everybody's shutting him down, like, immediately. They're like, nah, this is ridiculous.
And we find out that he's having some trouble in the finance world, and his wife is a little unhappy with some things.
Even like his kid, he don't really even care for him. He's wanting to get like a hug, and his kid's like, nah. But
it's really sad to see.
He's basically turned on everybody. He's trying so hard to get this found footage piece together and turned into a movie, and it ain't going so good.
Yeah, it's like the wife mentions that it's wedding season, which he gets most of his money to pay their bills from filming weddings for people. And so, like, now they're actively losing money because he's working on the movie. Which is really sad. But anyway, so he keeps getting shot down, and we learn more and more from the original documentary crew that's making the student film.
Yeah, it cuts back and forth. You'll get maybe 10 minutes from the original, then maybe 20 to 30 minutes of what's going on in the real world.
But I feel like us explaining it sounds a lot more complicated and jarring than it is.
It's not that complicated.
It's really easy to follow. It really is. It cuts back. You know, they start, you know, they go to like their advisor to talk about their findings. She doesn't believe the original film crew. And then Feldman, the cameraman, so to say.
He's the one that recorded down the tunnel.
Yeah, on his camera. And he starts noticing that Peeping Tom starts appearing in shots every time that they turn off the camera.
Yeah, every
and turn
time
it
the
back
camera
on.
turns on, there's like a high-pitched noise. And it's fun, actually. If you watch this movie, definitely do go check it out for yourself. Pause the movie maybe every time you hear like a high-pitched sound. If you pause it, look around, and we did this maybe 4 or 5 times. We're like, there he is. Like, you can actually stop. It shows where he was if you didn't see him, but it's fun to stop it yourself and look for him in the backgrounds. Like,
Yeah.
he's getting slightly closer and closer.
Rewatching this, I remembered that there was this particular scene where they're driving in a car and you see Peeping Tom like in a momentary flash down an alley, and it's mentioned later on as a piece of evidence. And when we first watched this, I was like, I wonder if we rewound it, if we could find him, and we just never did. And it's just like an unearthed memory that showed up, because you do in fact see him in all the shots that they like use as evidence later. You can see him live, like if you catch him. But essentially, they find out that Peeping Tom is in the camera, kind of.
Yeah, so since it didn't go to a person who stared down the tunnel for an hour, it's inside the camera, so it's counting the camera as every time it blinks, essentially, turns off, turns on, it gets closer. And we didn't mention this earlier, there's a few people, like, it's just stories. They're like, oh, this one girl looked at the sun to like blind herself essentially, but she still has to blink even though she's blind, so it didn't work. So that's pretty creepy imagery.
Yeah. And learning, as the original film crew learns about this like high-pitched noise and it indicates of Peeping Tom's appearance in their footage, we cut back to Gavin, who is also talking about this with a bunch of sound guys.
These are the people that I think are going to finance the movie if they liked it, I'm pretty sure, because I think that's who he was pitching it to, at least.
Well, all we know, they're different people, but it's a sound crew, and they're in like a recording studio. Anyway, so they investigate this high-pitched noise that we've spoke about, and one of the guys is like, it kind of sounds like Morse code, and so they slow it down, and they listen to it, and they translate it into Morse code, and it translates to blink, which really creepy touch. Like that a lot.
That's really cool, but of course, instantly they start, nah, he did this by himself. He edited that in. It's all fake. Even though it's like they had to mention all the steps he'd have to go through just to get it to work.
Which, I mean, we can't really give them too much flack, because later on in the movie, you actually, as an audience member, start to doubt it too. So at this point, it cuts back to the original film crew, and Feldman has become obsessed with what is going on. And he's like scribbling in a journal and all this other stuff. And
if you've watched, once again, the Marble Hornets Slender Man series, you know what's going on. It's the same thing. He's even drawing symbols that are very similar to like the Slender like circle, but it's only got 1 slash instead of 2.
And so with him becoming obsessed, he does this really cool thing where he does a blink test, where he turns off the camera and then turns it back on. He's on like a football field, and he does like 30 some odd takes. And
I didn't mean to cut you off. It was fun. At the beginning of the movie, I was joking. I was like, just spam it and just watch him get closer. And then he actually starts doing it. It's like, oh my God, he's doing it. I forgot about that.
But we actually see on the football field Peeping Tom get closer with each shot, until he's like standing there and he actually like waves at the camera. It's really like unnerving. But then it cuts away, and more of these people are saying that this could have been falsified and all this other stuff. And is kind of the movie starts to make the audience think that all of this might be fake, that Gavin was in on it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff comes up to where he was apparently away on like wedding trips, like we mentioned earlier, and his wife was like, oh, he disappears for a long time, but the finances normally match up, and there's parts that he cut from the movie saying like, oh, we could easily like special effects in this, and just he cut those parts from the movie, kind of hoping to
it's revealed that the original filmmakers did like a student film that got an award, and they because somebody didn't want to talk about a dead relative, they actually hired an actor, and so it's kind of like they're starting to discredit themselves because of conversations that were cut from the movie for Gavin's edit, and he's getting a lot of flack for cutting that stuff out because then it makes him seem like he's faking it. And so it's this whole thing about the audience is kind of unsure on whether or not it's real.
This man is so desperate. We forgot to mention this even earlier on. He goes to a Facebook ghost meetup team. Like, it's a group of like 40, 50-year-old women and men who are like ghost hunters, and they don't even believe him.
Which, the first time he goes there, it's not that bad. They're just like, we need more evidence. We'll get to the second part he's there, because it's actually one of the funniest parts of the whole movie. But what happens after this is that Gavin starts to go around and trying to get people to help him with this movie. The professional people say no because he doesn't have the money. And then his last effort was to go back to the paranormal group, and he goes there to show them more evidence. They call him a kook, and there's this really funny part where he's like, I don't think anybody else gets this much flack from you guys. And it's like, he's just like, I'm done here. Is this the exit? And he opens this door and he says, well, there's no orbs out there.
It's like, because I think they mentioned earlier on that the group had found like orbs or something like that, and that was something they believed in. Mm-hmm. It was for some reason he made that joke. But yeah, even this group of people that want to believe in ghosts don't even believe him. So this dude, he's down bad.
And there's this really bitchy woman that's like, I want to know what kind of medication you're on. And it's pretty funny. I mean, he was kind of a dickhead, so
they were both being annoying.
There's no right or wrong. It's just both wrong.
But I'd say this is when the third documentary almost starts. It's like the documentary crew that's been filming Gavin, they're the main characters now, and they start to make a presence. They've been quiet through pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah, just kind of asking questions.
Yeah, just very few questions here and there. And the leader of this documentary crew, he sets Gavin up on a radio show, and his last ditch effort is to upload the movie to a website for 24 hours and then take it down and see what people think, and maybe somebody will buy it off of him. And the talk show he goes on, like, people are calling in, just absolutely hammering this dude. They are like just calling him a fake and just everything you can think of. Like they even get, it's a pretty cool cameo, they get the director of Blair Witch to come on, and
the original.
Yeah, the Blair Witch Project, not Blair Witch. I forgot that the new one was called Blair Witch. But even he is like, it's very convenient that all these scenes, it's like, why are you recording this dialogue right now and stuff like that? And it's like, it makes sense what he's saying. But of course, like, well, this is kind of still on the spectrum of, is it real or is it not real? Because we're still trying to figure out for ourselves.
Right. But the documentary crew that's doing the documentary about Gavin, doing the documentary about these people doing butterfly kisses, they asked the radio host to not tar and feather him, but by accident he's tarred and feathered anyway. And he gets totally blasted, and they go back to his house afterwards, and it's empty. His wife and kid are gone, and he finds this note, Gavin does, and it's revealed that his kid had an account, like a savings account, that his mother-in-law and father-in-law were putting money into for him for the future. And Gavin had taken all of the money out without telling anyone and put it towards the movie. And so his wife left him for it. And it's really sad, but I mean, he kind of did it to himself, but it's still sad.
And then he kind of snaps right there. He's like, you know what? One of the reasons people thought he might have been faking it is he has the same exact camera that Feldman had to record the video. and people are suspecting that he was the one actually filming them too. But he goes to the tunnel, which the whole movie we were like, maybe you should have started there and be like, look, it's real, but then I guess you wouldn't be alive. But but he goes to this tunnel and he's just standing still, like completely still. It's real creepy. And the documentary crew we mentioned that the movie kind of follows now is like, what's wrong with you? And he basically is just standing there. They go back to the truck and the team is starting to turn on the main director of the documentary, on Gavin, saying like, we kind of screwed up, like we shouldn't have pushed him, and we kind of made it seem like it wasn't real, and just pushed him over the edge, essentially, like putting him on the talk show probably wasn't a good idea. And then they start hearing a running sound, like it's obviously Gavin, like you hear him running across the railway, and they go up there and start chasing after him, shouting his name, and he's gone. I think they say they see something at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, but they're unsure.
Yeah, because their camera died, and so it's like pitch black, but they see something down the tunnel. They're like, I'm not sure, but at this point, Gavin goes missing for almost 2 weeks. I think it's 19.
No, he's missing for 9 days.
I meant to say 9.
But then he, the director of the documentary about Gavin, I hope you understand where we are at this point. But he receives a package from Gavin, from a place not here. And inside of it is Feldman's journal, like the one that we saw him scribbling in, and also Gavin's journal, and a hotel room key. So they track down the hotel and they go there and they find a bunch of GoPros and like a lot of filming equipment set up with all the SIM cards or the data cards gone, and nobody knows where Gavin is. And then somebody walks in the freaking bathroom and he's in there dead. Like we see some pretty horrific shots of him actually.
They said it was his heart stopped at 39 years old.
Yeah, heart failure. But they call the police.
Implies kind of he was scared to death, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. They call the police and they have like an interview with the police about what they're doing. Then it cuts back to, like, during this whole thing, it cuts back to the original filmmaking crew where we see Feldman's descent into madness as Peeping Tom is encroaching on him until he finally dies as well. So we see Feldman die, and right before he dies, the last scene that he has with Sophia, he tells Sophia that he's going to come for her next. And so, like, after that, it kind of goes into this whole thing about the documentary crew that was doing the documentary about Gavin. They're trying to decide what their next steps are. And then...
and at this point, too, it seems like the tides are changing after Gavin's dead. Now everyone's starting to believe him. It's like, as soon as he died, now everyone's changing their mind. They go back to the sound studio and they find the frequency and they lay it out a certain way, and it's the picture of the Peeping Tom. It's really cool.
And also on top of that, there is, whenever Feldman dies, there's only one jump scare in the whole movie, and that's when Feldman dies. But I kind of like how they explain it. The footage is reviewed by one of the experts that has been debunking this whole thing. And he's like, if you look in Peeping Tom's eye, you actually see a reverse shot of the tunnel from the opposite view, like it's Peeping Tom's perspective down the tunnel to the camera.
You see the light at the end of the camera flashing down the tunnel.
Yeah, and so it's almost like he can't disprove it now. And then, all these other people are starting to, like, believe him, and then the documentary crew, like, is trying to figure out what to do. It cuts back to the original Butterfly Kisses student director, Sophia, who then explains that, she went to sleep last night and had a dream that she was at the tunnel, and she stared for an hour. But then when Peeping Tom appeared, she realized that she was not dreaming, and she had, like, sleep teleported 10 miles away.
Yeah, she said she lived 10 miles from that spot, and she don't know how she got there and back.
Yeah, and so she, like, teleported there in the middle of the night, and now she can see Peeping Tom.
That's really scary.
Yeah, like it's almost like he's garnering more power, and he's becoming stronger.
He's spreading the message almost.
And then the documentary crew that was doing the documentary about Gavin, I keep saying that, but I hope that it's because it's clarifying. They decide that they're going to finish the documentary and publish it, and just like from where they are
and
now.
It's kind of hinting that David is next up on the chain of people. He's the director of Gavin's documentary. It's so confusing to explain, but it's not. I promise it's not. So it seems like he's the one starting to be like, I'm starting to believe this. They're standing at the railway, kind of hinting at what they're probably about to do.
But also, I kind of disagree with you. I mean, that is a possibility, and I think he is obsessed with it, whether he's going to say it or not. But when it comes to the documentary about Gavin, he's saying that this is the beginning, but we should, finish it here, release it, and then continue the investigation from here. The documentary about Gavin's story is over, but this is the beginning of trying to prove that he was right. So it's like,
and they're asking him, do you believe Gavin? And he doesn't give an answer, but it's most likely, yeah, he believes he believes in the Peeping Tom now.
And then it cuts back to Sophia in her room that we saw at the very beginning, because the movie opens with this, and she repeats her monologue from the beginning, and then it continues where it gets cut off at the beginning. And she's basically saying, I have found a way to beat Peeping Tom. And it's because, you can't cheat him if you can blink.
Yeah, she said the girl who tried to burn her retinas out, she still had to blink, so that didn't work. So what she does is smash her award that she won for the previous movie.
Yeah, like the glass.
Yeah, and she takes a shard of glass and just just right in the eye.
Shoves it in both of her eyes so she will no longer have to blink. And it cuts away and credits roll.
Which I doubt she would have survived because she would still have eyelids.
I mean, I'm not a medical professional and I don't know that much.
I don't know.
This, but
the fact that she doesn't show up at any point, I guess, means that somehow he got her. I'm sure you can't cheat him.
See, I thought that she was gonna cut her eyelids out, which that's gonna be painful. A lot of eye drops, I imagine, in her future. But I don't know. Whether or not she was successful is actually not answered. It's kind of left up to our interpretation, which we both think she's dead.
It's left very open-ended, kind of for you to be like, you kind of make your own conclusions.
So yeah, that is Butterfly Kisses. Second time watching it, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good.
Definitely recommend it. I mean, there are some acting moments that are pretty questionable, but then again, you don't know if that's intentional or not.
Like we said, it's also probably a pretty low budget.
Yeah,
indie. It's definitely an indie film.
We have no idea how much. We tried to look up the budget and we couldn't find it. Maybe we just didn't look hard enough. But overall, great movie. So without further ado, let's get into our scoring. So for our scoring, as always, we start off with story. So Zombie Cat, what did you think of story?
I love the story. I love anything that's kind of like this kind of cryptid style, like Bloody Mary, urban legend kind of stuff, Crybaby Bridge, all that. I honestly really like the idea of blinking and this creature getting closer and closer. I really like that, so I'll probably give it a 7. It's not like over the top good, but it's pretty interesting. I really like it.
So for story, I actually gave it an 8, because we've seen a lot of found footage documentaries recently, like horror documentaries, and there are other ones out there, which we will touch on in the future. But I felt like this one was a unique twist compared to even all the other ones that we've seen. This isn't the normal, like, we're documenting our trip or we're documenting our paranormal escapades in our house. This is like, I know it sounds complicated the way we're explaining it, but I promise you, following the movie is not this hard.
Yeah, go check it out for yourself for sure. Go buy it on DVD, buy it on digital. Or
usually you can get it pretty cheap. But I gave it an 8. I think it's well above average. I
Yeah.
think it definitely stands out for what it was trying to accomplish. So you gave it a 7, I gave it an 8. That gives us 7.5 for story. Next up we have characters. Now, I feel like this one was an interesting one. What do you think?
I don't really care about any of the characters, to be honest. It's more of the story, and the characters are just driving the story along to show us more about Peeping Tom, who's the highlight of the movie, of course. Like, they're not bad, so I'd say like a 4. Nothing special, really. Just they're just there to kind of, like I said, progress the story. They're not bad necessarily, just like very average, a little below average.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I gave it just a straight 5.
Yeah.
Just completely run of the middle.
I was
average.
bouncing right on there, but I'm like, did anyone really blow me away? I'm like, nah.
No, not really. But I mean, that doesn't take away from the movie.
No.
In my opinion.
No, not at all. It's great.
We'll explain more in the next category. But you gave it a 4. I gave it a 5. 4.5 for characters. Now, the star of the show, antagonist. We actually have a definitive antagonist for this movie, and that antagonist is Peeping Tom. I am a big fan of Peeping Tom.
I am too. That's such a fun ghost-like idea. Like, just I like that idea more than like Bloody Mary or something like that. But so just for that concept alone, I'd honestly give the antagonist like a 9, because it's just so cool. Like, the idea of like, I blink, so it's like I can't go 10 seconds without blinking. I'd be dead in like 10 minutes probably.
Well, just between all of us here, if I was in this situation, I would just blink and get it over with. I would just keep blinking until it was done.
Well, I wouldn't do it in the first place either.
Well, yeah, who's gonna...
I don't believe in ghosts, no way, but I still wouldn't do this because it's pretty creepy. The tunnel is pretty creepy. It's pretty cool even when the high school kid or the college kid is staring down the tunnel. He's like almost like sensing something. He's like, this is creepy.
Yeah, he says, and I quote, it's almost like the tunnel is staring back at me.
Yeah, so it's like right there I'd be like,
Yeah, I'm going home. For the same reasons that Zombie Cat gave a 9, I gave an 8. So that gives us 8.5 for antagonist. Really original, I feel like. I mean, obviously...
I've never heard of anything like that.
I haven't, delved into the world of creepypastas, as you all know, if you've been keeping up with our videos. But, I mean, I feel some very reminiscent vibes of, like, Slender Man.
It does sound like a good creepypasta.
The Babadook, even. But I definitely think that this is, like, a boogeyman
The closest
story.
thing I can think of besides Slender Man, of course, is, like, any kind of things and like stories and stuff. I think it originated in Doctor Who. There's probably stuff before that, like you turn your back to something and it gets closer.
Yeah, I think that's the statues.
It's like the Weeping Angels.
The Weeping Angel statues. So yeah, moving on, we get to humor. This wasn't really a funny movie. There was some funny parts.
Yeah, it definitely had like a few jokes here and there, but there wasn't really nothing. It doesn't take away from it. It's just not really like especially funny.
It's a shorter movie, so I think that the not a lot of humor aspect doesn't really eat away at it. Like when you have like a 2-hour-long horror movie, if there isn't some funny moments, you kind of get lost in the monotony. But I gave humor a 3 for this movie, only for the pure fact of how hard we laughed when he opened that exit door and he said, "Well, no orbs out here," and then walked away. There's just a lot of like sarcasm that's really funny and like human dialogue.
Yeah, I'd give it a 2 just because that's really the only joke in the movie. Like, there's nothing necessarily funny about it. Once again, not a bad thing in this topic, but for that same joke, I'm a non-believer in ghosts and stuff like that, so something like that is pretty relatable to something I would probably do to be a smart ass.
So you gave it a 2, I gave it a 3, 2.5 for humor. Now we move on to scariness. As you all know by this point, I'm a little on the harsher side when it comes to scary for horror movies. So let's let you go first.
It's a little hard because it's like it's scary, but it's almost more like interesting. Like, I can't explain it. I'd probably give scariness a 6 just for Peeping Tom alone. It's fun whenever the movie like glitches out and you can pause it and see him, and he starts getting closer and closer. That's so creepy. I love that character a lot.
You know, for the same reasons you gave it a 6, I gave it a 4. I think that Peeping Tom was the only creepy thing about this movie. And I mean, that's a good thing. That's the antagonist. You know, he's supposed to be the scary part. But I mean, there was one jump scare. I'm not saying that jump scares are essential, and I don't...
it was a good jump scare, too, because it's kind of earned. Like, the movie, like we said, doesn't have any jump scares besides that one. And it's not just... Well, it is kind of just a loud noise, but it's something to be scared of, which is something I always complain about.
I think the reason I'm scoring it so low in terms of scariness, like 4, is because I think that the ambiance is lost. Like, there's not a creepy ambiance that follows this movie from beginning to end.
It's like it helps the story, but hurts the scariness when it jumps from the Peeping Tom story to the Gavin story to the director's story. It's like there's 3 stories we're following, so it's like once it cuts to modern day and it's super bright and sunny, and it's just kind of more of, it's kind of sad more than anything.
If we would have seen the Butterfly Kisses documentary from beginning to end, and then the second half of the movie would have been Gavin's story, I feel like it wouldn't have made as much sense, but I feel like the overall experience would be more creepy for the first half.
Yeah.
I just feel like the cutting back and forth, it lends itself really well for the exploration of what's going on and like the whole mystery behind it, but I feel like them doing that leans more into the mystery genre rather than the horror genre. And so, you know, some of the past movies we've talked about recently, like some of them capture ambiance really well. While they're not overly scary, it's just this unnerving feeling the whole time you're watching it. And I feel like this movie didn't really capitalize on that very well. But Peeping Tom, great character. Because of that, scariness has a 4. So you gave it a 6, I gave it a 4. I believe that gives us an average of 5, so straight up average. Lastly, in our totaling of scores, we have overall experience. What did we think of the movie as a whole?
I give it a 7. I really enjoyed this movie. It's nothing that's gonna like scare your pants off or anything like that, but I really enjoyed this movie. Like, I'd definitely watch it again multiple times. Like, it's spooky. I really like the antagonist, Peeping Tom. I like the urban legend behind him. Like I said, the characters aren't that great, but just the antagonist and concept alone is good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also gave it a 7. I think it's above average, but it's not like, it's not game changing or blow you away, but it's one that's like, you know, if you think about like found footage horror movies, you may think of this one. It's up there. So yeah, so you gave it 7, I gave it 7, average of 7 for experience. Definitely recommend checking it out for yourself. You know, have your own opinion. But before we head into our outro and talking about all that wonderful jazz, it's time for our game where we guess the Rotten Tomatoes score by critics and audience alike.
I'm scared this one's gonna be super hard. I don't know.
I have no idea.
I feel like this could be poorly received or very well received.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I think because you always win.
What did you beat me in? You beat me in 1.
No, I tied you in something. I guessed something right on the dot, and so...
I can't remember what movie that was, but...
I guessed one score right on the dot, and you guessed the other score closer than I did, so we split the points. So we both won. I have never won one straight up.
I still don't remember what it was. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy.
So... Do you want to go first, or you want me to go first? And we're starting with critics, like normal.
I'll go first. This one's really hard. I'm gonna say a 67 from critics and a 72 from the audience.
Okay. For me, for critics, what'd you say?
I said 67 from critics and 72 for audience.
I'm gonna say for critics, I'm gonna say a 70, and for audience, I'm gonna say an 80.
Are y'all ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous.
Okay.
The critic score is actually 100%.
Whoa!
I swear to God. And there's only 5 listed reviews,
Oh, okay.
so that could be why. But still, to have 5 critics give it a perfect score is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
The audience score is a 70 though.
So he was closer on the critic score. I was closer on the audience score. So we'll just split that one again.
I have still never won. I'm always sharing the winner's circle, never the winner.
That's pretty awesome, though. 100%.
It is
So,
crazy, yeah.
Yeah, out of all the movies we've seen, I think that's the first one that it's still holding 100%.
I wonder if it's just that underrated that literally only.
Must be.
5 critics have done a review over
I mean,
it.
I'm sure more people have seen it than that, obviously.
There's,
Well,
a,
yeah.
there's a bunch of audience ratings. There's just
Yeah, yeah.
not many.
For some reason, there's not many critic ratings.
I mean, I can kind of get behind it a little bit. Like, the story makes sense. You know, the movie's good as a whole. A good character, like a good antagonist. Like, I don't really have any qualms about this movie. There's nothing that sticks out as anything particularly bad.
No.
So, you know, I can get behind that. Unexpected, to say the least.
Yeah, because it's definitely not perfect. It's far from perfect, but it's good. It's really good.
So, guys, if you don't know already, we have an Instagram. So go follow us over at the Horror Den channel on Instagram to keep up to date on all our real world shenanigans as well as upcoming video updates.
We also have a Patreon. Here's our patron. If you would like to be a member for as low as $5 a month, you can have your name at the end of all of our videos. We also put all the funds right back into the channel. Nothing goes to like personal use or anything like that. We all 3 work and we have to just spare a day out of the week to get this done. So just for our passion of it.
Yeah, and with this money, actually, we were able to buy DMAC, our editor, a piece of sound equipment, and we're planning to invest in another microphone. But we've also got a recording stand for our recording device, which we shoot all these on, which is coming, so it's not as rigged up as it is currently. So your money is not being wasted. So if you would like to support us, go over there and, you know, give us as much as you desire, or none. It's up to you. But keeping an update on all the channel stuff. We have some really exciting plans moving forward. I know that we've been talking about potentially doing a slasher movie in the not too distant future. We have some pretty exciting updates, you know, working with our buddy MacLeod, who is also a fan and artist, as well as put in the talks with a band which I know personally, which when the time comes for that, we'll let you guys know what's going on. So just keep looking, and we'll keep posting, and just let us know down in the comment below if you've seen this movie before and like what you think about it, or you know, if you're gonna watch it, and if you did watch it, give us your opinion. Let's start a conversation. But you know, keep up doing what you're doing, and you know, give us all the support you desire, and like share it with your friends and like-minded people that you think would enjoy our videos. And most importantly, stay spooky out there.